California's new workplace violence prevention requirements will be here really soon. There's a lot to get done in a short amount of time. As part of these requirements, employers must explain in detail how workplace violence incidents involving any employee are reported, investigated, and recorded. Oh, and one more thing. The law requires that these processes be effective too. In this video, we'll discuss what you need to know about creating an effective complaint and investigation process that complies with this new law and lessens your risk of a significant workplace violence incident. Hi, I'm Mike Corwin. I help businesses, nonprofit organizations, and government agencies lessen their risk from workplace violence. I spent over 30 years conducting workplace investigations, including those involving harassment, bullying, and violence. I want to help you get started right now in developing an effective workplace violence prevention program. I've got a free workplace violence prevention checklist for you to use. It identifies the critical steps you need to implement, from an effective complaint and investigation process to assessing the physical environment of the workplace, to training in situational awareness and de-escalation, and even self-defense that will help you comply with the new law while keeping your staff safe. To download it now, simply click on the link in the description below. These processes matter. California is right to mandate them. We've all heard about incidents of workplace harassment and bullying that went unchecked by employers until they exploded in acts of horrific violence. Violence that could have been prevented had employers used an effective complaint and investigation process. So here's what you need to know about California's requirements and what makes for an effective complaint reporting and investigation process. California requires, quote, effective procedures for the employer to accept and respond to reports of workplace violence and to prohibit retaliation against an employee who makes such a report. And for employers to describe, quote, how employee concerns will be investigated as part of the employer's responsibility. This is pretty clear cut. So how do you create an effective complaint and investigation process? It starts with consistency in process and in practice. Every complaint should be processed in writing. Each person reporting an incident should be provided with a form that allows for a full description of the events that occurred, including who committed the act of violence or the threat of violence, what that person's connection is to both the entity and to the victim of the act, where the incident occurred, including whether it was on premises or off, and the types of working conditions, the nature of the incident, the consequences of the incident to the complainant, and any witnesses or anyone else familiar with the incident, and finally, who, if anybody, including law enforcement, was the incident reported to. The employer must also create a written policy prohibiting retaliation for reporting an incident, and this policy must be given to the complaining person at the time the complaint is brought. Once the complaint is received, it should be assigned for investigation to someone with some training and experience in conducting investigations. There should be a process in place to check for possible conflicts of interest and procedures to follow should there be a conflict of interest. Each investigation should be conducted following a specific process. Standardizing the approach takes away guesswork, and it helps you to ensure that each investigation is conducted effectively. It's critical during the investigation that good note-taking be done and utilized throughout. Documenting the actual words used during an interview and the manner in which they're said is much more effective than bullet pointing, which is basically just your interpretation of what matters rather than what's actually been said. And later on, if you need to obtain a statement or declaration, you're going to have to use their words anyway. So here's the process to follow. Interviewing the complainant, have the complainant take you through the incident in as much detail as possible. The interview should be conducted in a narrative form where the complainant takes you through everything rather than a stilted Q&A approach. Also, ask about the connection between the complainant and the alleged wrongdoer. Ask for the names of anyone who witnessed the incident or who may have knowledge of the incident, and this includes even after the fact. and what those people might say. Also ask for any documentation, photos, etc. that are relevant to the incident. Next, interview the respondent. The person alleged to have engaged in violence, bullying, harassment, or threats. Provide the respondent with a copy of the policy prohibiting retaliation and ensure that the respondent understands the policy. Have the respondent then take you through the incident in narrative form and provide you with any additional information regarding the relationships and interactions with the complainant. Ask for the names of any witnesses or anyone else with the information about the incident and what they might say. And finally, ask for any documents or photos, etc., that the respondent may have that relates to the alleged incident. Next, conduct interviews with each person identified by either the complainant or the respondent. And also ask them for the names of anyone else who may have information about the alleged incident. Then ask them for any documents and photographs that may help shed light on what took place. And finally, provide them with a copy of the policy prohibiting retaliation. Each interview you complete should be summarized into an interview summary. Basically, here's where you'll report what each person said during their interview. I recommend personally that you organize the interview summary by topics covered. It makes it so much easier to identify the important information and for other people to read it and understand what's going on. Using the information contained in the interview summaries, documents, photographs, and the employment policies and personnel records, prepare a report of the investigation identifying whether the information was corroborated and how it was corroborated. And also include a credibility assessment of the parties, who appears to be truthful, who maybe is not. Then make a determination if there's enough information to find that the incident did or did not happen, or whether it's inconclusive. Also identify what employment policies may have been violated. Finally, in a separate document, prepare recommendations for those who will make the employment decisions. I always prefer to leave witnesses' names out of the report in order to prevent retaliation should the report get disseminated. My preferred approach would be to say, one person stated that this happened and the person was at this location when it was observed. That way you still convey the information that corroborates or disputes the complaint while allowing for confidentiality during the process. It will be easy enough down the road to identify who provided what information from the interview summaries if that becomes necessary. Remember that when it comes to designing and implementing a complaint and investigation approach, the goal here is for consistency and using a process designed to get as close as possible to the truth about what occurred so that the decision makers have the information they need to make proper decisions. If you're ready to get started developing an effective workplace violence prevention program, download my free checklist. In it, I've provided you with the critical steps that will help you to comply with the new California law and to keep your employees safer from violence. There's a link to download this checklist in the description below. In my next piece to help you comply with California's new workplace violence prevention law, I'll cover conducting a premises evaluation and provide you with some recommendations regarding internal communication approaches when issues of potential violence are occurring.